Okay, we've reached the very last session, the very last discussion. And listen, this is a fantastic discussion. I was very fortunate to talk to Arianna Huffington last week, and we have it here. But this is the Keynote fireside chat, talking to Arianna about her experiences, her insights, her vision for the future, but about reimagining and retooling organisations. But this was a fantastic discussion. I really hope you enjoy it, and I'll be back to wrap up very soon. But thank you so much.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to Arianna Huffington for joining me in this Keynote fireside chat, Reimagining and Retooling Organisations and Human Capital for a Digital World. Arianna needs little introduction, but just in case you aren't aware of the various aspects of her career, here are just a few. Arianna is a best-selling author, founder of the Huffington Post, and founder and CEO of Thrive Global. In 2005, she launched the Huffington Post, a news and blog site that quickly became one of the most widely read, linked to, and frequently cited media brands on the internet. She has written over 15 books, and in 2016, Ms. Huffington launched Thrive Global, a behaviour change tech company with a mission of changing the way we work and live by ending the collective delusion that burnout is the price we must pay for success. Arianna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, John. Great to be with you.
So, Arianna, let's jump in. I want to start by asking you, the theme of the conference is about digital transformation. You're a digital pioneer, having founded the Huffington Post at what was still the earliest stages of the digital economy. You've also written about the need to couple digital transformation with a focus on human capital. What do you mean by that, Arianna?
So, John, as you know, obviously, the digital transformation has been an absolutely essential way for us to grow and, frankly, to survive this pandemic. I mean, we would not be able to be together, you in London, me in New York, just to mention something obvious. We would not have been able to continue running and building businesses without all the digital tools at our disposal. The Huffington Post, of course, was a manifestation of a digital transformation of the news media. But while I was building the Huffington Post, I also became acutely aware of the importance to protect our humanity while we are constantly expanding into artificial intelligence, machine learning, and more complex and fascinating manifestations of digital transformation. So I think that the future belongs to this alchemy between digital transformation and a layer of humanity over everything. Let me give you an example from the Huffington Post. We were partly responsible for the 24/7 news cycle because once you are constantly posting, there is no newspaper or magazine to wait for. And so I became acutely aware of the need for boundaries, both for our journalists and for our readers. So we had very clear hours when somebody was on and when somebody was not on. Not everybody has to be on 24/7, even though the news cycle or the business cycle is 24/7. And the same applied to our readers and increasingly to everybody as we are getting more and more addicted to ways to communicate and absorb news online, social media, games, binge watching. It's even more important for us to set some boundaries so that we have time to reconnect with our own humanity, recharge, refuel, renew ourselves, and return to the challenges of business life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arianna. So really, really interesting about coupling those things together. But diving a bit deeper, how does human capital play into digital transformation? How should companies or those joining us and listening to us, How does human capital play into digital transformation?
So here's what is so interesting, John, that during the pandemic, there has been a much greater appreciation of the importance of human capital in growing businesses. Let me give you an interesting number. In 1975, 83% of the value of companies in the S&P 500 came from their physical capital. In 2015, 84% of that value came from the human capital. And the SEC here in the States actually has now made it a requirement for companies to report on what they are doing for their human capital. Before this new groundbreaking rule, all they had to report was the number of people they employed. Now they have to report on what they are doing to retain, develop, attract talent. So now we are seeing that what a company is doing for its human capital is a business strategy. It's no longer just a warm and fuzzy HR benefit. It's absolutely critical to the success of the company, all the more important during what has been termed the Great Resignation, when unprecedented numbers of people, especially working mothers, are leaving the workplace, both during the pandemic and now as we are gradually getting out of it.
Absolutely. Arianna, this is fascinating to me as an economist who works in the economist group, thinking about the ways perception of human capital has changed over the years. Given what you just said, did you notice this go to a new level in COVID, throughout COVID, that the importance, how human capital was perceived? Did you notice that trend just accelerate throughout the last, say, 18 months of COVID?
Absolutely. Thrive Global, my new company, is working in this field of human resources and human capital. And what we have seen is that all those concerns were now the concerns of the entire C-suite, not just the HR department. Just to give you an example, we recently launched Thrive, our SaaS enterprise product and our leadership journeys that go with it, to 90,000 employees at Pfizer. We launched it during an earnings meeting with Albert Bourla, their CEO, and with a fireside chat between Angela Wang, their head of biopharma, and myself. So this is kind of the new elevation of employee mental resilience and well-being. And we see that as something essential, given, the mental health crisis, the increase in chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension beyond the impact of COVID in the workplace.
Absolutely, Arianna. This is fascinating. So I guess what I've noticed over the last 18 months talking to clients and colleagues around the world is that business leaders have started to place a bigger premium, more value on human capital. And these issues that you're speaking about, mental health, well-being, resilience, I guess if there's one small positive to come out of the last 18 months, is that these issues, the value people are placing on their staff, the human capital within their organisations, is now much higher than maybe what it was pre-COVID. So leadership and the value people are placing on human capital seems to be much higher these days.
Absolutely, John. I love what you said, because while the pandemic has been a crucible, a time of tremendous grief and pain and losses, it has also been a catalyst for fundamental changes that, frankly, should have happened long before the pandemic. But as you know, transformational change is very hard. And it often takes a crisis to be able to come into fruition. And, it's interesting because in Dubai, there was a minister of happiness and well-being ahead of a lot of other countries countries' focus on this. So you can have a Minister of Artificial Intelligence and remote work, as you have in the UAE, and the Minister of Happiness and Well-being. That's really what we need to come to terms with. There is no paradox. There is no trade-off. The more you focus on the well-being and mental resilience of your employees, the better you will be at bringing about a robust digital transformation and facing whatever challenges the future holds. And we're seeing that with validated by all the new neuroscientific research, like recently from Yale, we have another piece of research that shows that when people are stressed and burnt out, literally their prefrontal cortex, which is where we make decisions, are productive, etc., shuts down, and the more primitive part of the human operating system comes to the forefront. So even if our only preoccupation was around productivity of the human capital, when we have a stressed out human capital, they are not going to be as productive, and we have tons of data on that. And more leaders are taking this into account.
Absolutely. Arianna, I wonder if you share my optimism. I'm slightly optimistic that as we slowly come out of COVID around the world, slowly but surely, hopefully coming out of COVID, do you think the leadership that you see around the world in companies, do you think the value people are placing on mental health and resilience and human capital, do you think is that resilient? It's not a passing fad. We're not going to go back to the old ways, say in 12 months' time, once we're through 2021 and 2022?
No, I'm very optimistic, John. We work with many multinational companies, Accenture, Salesforce, Walmart, etc., and we see that across every one of these companies. And we see it not just in terms of what companies are doing for those like you and me who had the privilege during the pandemic to be able to work from home, but for frontline workers. We are working with 2.2 million associates, as they are called, at Walmart. Most of them are store associates. And it's amazing to see the impact that focusing on their well-being, focusing on what we call micro steps, small daily incremental steps that actually change outcomes around health, around happiness, productivity, has also on how happy people are at work, how likely they are to stay there, how productive they are.
Absolutely. Arianna, I want to link this to hybrid working. And I just want to ask about, again, sort of leadership and the value leaders and companies are putting on human capital. But I'm wondering if there's going to be some competitive pressure in the positive sense over the next few years, that companies who maybe don't allow hybrid working, that maybe don't put the value on well-being and resilience and the positive things you spoke about. I wonder if there's going to be some competitive pressure, because people, after experiencing, there's been some fortunate people, of course, but after experiencing hybrid working conditions, I think more people will want to continue those hybrid working conditions over the next few years. So I just wanted to ask you about how leaders and how companies should think about hybrid working and basically trusting their staff, trusting their human capital to continue on past the crisis, working in that sort of hybrid way.
Yes, I really believe from all the data we're looking at and from all the companies we're working with that a hybrid future is here to stay. And what we are really figuring out now is how to create in this hybrid world all these moments of connection, of serendipity, of creativity that emerge naturally when we are all together in one space. We, for example, have created a feature in our app, and also we partnered with Zoom and with Cisco WebEx to launch it, called Reset, which is a 60-second reset in between Zoom calls or WebEx calls, or when some people are remote and some people are physically together, and how can you bring them together, and how can you reduce that virtual fatigue that happens when we're on constant virtual interactions. And again, part to you and me being optimistic, the latest neuroscience shows us that it takes 60 to 90 seconds to course correct from stress. So while stress is unavoidable, cumulative stress is avoidable. So even if you go on Zoom now, you can download the Thrive Reset app, and it comes preloaded with 60-second pauses where you can breathe consciously, remember what you're grateful for, get up and stretch, put your problems in perspective. But also in our app, you have the opportunity to create your own reset. So, John, if we had started this conversation with you playing your reset or my playing your reset, you would have had a glimpse into the things that give you joy in your life. Maybe kids, maybe pets, maybe favorite quotes, music. So now we recommend to all the companies we're working with, and we do it at Thrive, that you start every meeting, every hybrid meeting, where some people are together, some people are remote, by one of them playing their own reset and having a glimpse into their lives, building intimacy into a hybrid environment. We'll need to have more and more of these rituals and be very deliberate about them, because what used to happen naturally, casually around the water cooler now has to be much more planned and intentional.
Absolutely, Arianna. I think that these ideas and these rituals, new ways of working, are really, really important. I think we're still working out hybrid meetings. How do you run hybrid meetings when some people are at home, some people are in the office? How do you build culture and inclusion in these sort of hybrid working? But I think these ideas about what you're trying and others are trying, I think the more we talk about these things, the better. And every company might have to find their own balance, their own ways of working. But I think the intention to try and build resilience, build inclusion, build culture, but still allowing this hybrid work, I think is hopefully a really positive thing for many organisations.
Well, I think what you said about inclusion is also very important. We have a lot more expectations from leaders right now, John. We want them to be inclusive, empathetic. We want them to be able to face a future of extreme uncertainty and be able to innovate and be creative. And all these are qualities that are depleted when leaders are burnt out. That's why our first leadership journey is entitled "Put Your Own Oxygen Mask On First." A lot of leaders have bought into the collective delusion that to be great leaders, they have to sacrifice their own well-being. They have to be always on. And it's totally contrary to science and data, which shows very clearly, as elite athletes have demonstrated, that for peak performance, you need cycles of recovery alternating with performance. And Tom Brady, for example, said very clearly that if he had not prioritized his sleep, all the ways that he recharges and recovers, he would not be able to win a Super Bowl at 43.
That's impressive. Absolutely impressive.
We all need to find our own ways as leaders to role model how we recharge, and give cultural permission to everyone in the organization to do the same, and then see the data, measure the data that shows that you have a more effective, more productive organization with lower healthcare costs, less attrition, and a greater engagement.
Absolutely. I think that leadership is really, really important, because if the leaders of a company or organization are doing that, that helps to set the culture, the tone. Absolutely. Arianna, I just want to sort of delve a bit deeper into technology, given the theme of the conference, and just ask you for a bit more of a discussion around the role of technology. You've mentioned already a few examples and ideas and opportunities, but just to go in a bit more about the role of technology in nurturing human capital and fostering resilience and well-being. So it'd be great to sort of spend a bit more time just how technology really supports some of these positive aspects that we've just discussed.
I love actually that question, because we've spent so much time focusing on the problems created by the advance of technology and AI, a loss of jobs especially, and not enough in what I think is going to be one of the most incredible blessings of AI, which is going to be to offer personalized steps and nudges and content to help people go upstream and improve behaviors and prevent disease. I believe, John, that behavior change and achieving behavior change is going to be the moonshot around health and healthcare. Right now, healthcare is really disease care around the world. We meet people at the point of failure when they're already sick, and we're constantly innovating around how to deliver better disease care. And that's, of course, extremely important. But the vast majority of disease is preventable. Over 75% of chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension, all of which, as you know, are skyrocketing around the world, and they're preventable. They're based on what we eat, how much we sleep, the stress we carry, how much we move, etc. So it's incredibly hard to change behavior. I've built a behavior change technology company, and let me tell you, I've spent years studying with the best scientists in the field to be able to crack the code. And the more personalized the nudges, the micro steps, the storytelling that's fed to the user, the more likely it is that they're going to be effective at behavior change. And that kind of behavior change around food and sleep and stress is going to be incredibly vital in changing health outcomes. So I actually see this much less frequently discussed aspect of technology and AI as one of the great possibilities in the future.
Very super interesting, Arianna. Really, really. So the focus on prevention, not just meeting at the point of disease or the point of care. But so I can imagine, and I'm not an AI expert. I'm an economist, but not an AI expert. I can see the sort of AI and nudges in our sort of personal devices, in our personal lives around health, and I can see the benefits that might bring. But obviously, Arianna, this is also possible in our work lives. So whatever tools people have in their own companies and organizations, these nudges you're talking about, these rituals you mentioned 5 or 10 minutes ago, AI can, I imagine, help us in our work lives as well in the same way it can help in our personal lives.
Oh, absolutely. I make no distinction in that sense. I think it's going to be absolutely critical to have all these well-being nudges, or as I prefer to call them, micro steps, because I want to remind people that they're really, really small steps towards their well-being, steps that we call too small to fail. And all of these have to be embedded in the workflows. They have to be part of our daily lives at work. That's why I mentioned reset, John. At the moment, a lot of companies still tend to think of offering mental health services as being a mental health day or a mental health week. And the truth is that these are important, But what happens every day is really what ultimately makes the biggest difference in employee resilience and well-being. So we need to embed these micro steps into the workflows, whatever you're using, Teams, Slack, Zoom, WebEx, embed these reminders, because we've all for decades been brought up to think that powering through exhaustion is the way to be amazing at work. And John, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I try to understand how come an entire civilization believes something false. And it goes back to the first industrial revolution when we all started revering machines, and after machines, software. And the goal, both with machines and software, is to minimize downtime. But that's not the goal for the human operating system. For the human operating system, downtime is a feature, not a bug. We need it. Um, we know from ancient wisdom, from every spiritual tradition also, as well as from modern science, how essential that recovery is.
Absolutely, Arianna. I think, I grew up on Rocky movies, so Hollywood's taught us about hard work and fighting through pain and all that sort of thing. But it reminds me of your Tom Brady example that, if leading sports people like Tom Brady, and I've heard LeBron James say similar things, can value repair and recovery and sleep and mindfulness, then, that sends a big signal rather than the Rocky movies that I was brought up on. But Arianna, I think, as we discussed with the hybrid working 5 or 10 minutes ago, I imagine there's going to be a lot of experimentation, a lot of innovation, no matter what tools people are using and teams they work within. But I guess if the intention and the value system is there to create a better well-being for all of our teams, to create resilience, to create that positive culture, then it's the intention that really matters. But I just can imagine a lot of experimentation over the next 2 or 3 years with all these tools and embedding what you call micro steps.
A lot of experimentation. We are talking with a lot of companies like right now, including Cisco, about putting more emphasis on onboarding, for example. Onboarding is the moment when you have the full attention of your employees. They're just joining you. They want to belong. They want to be part of the culture. So this is the time to embed all these well-being and mental resilience practices. And so in the work we're doing with companies, we recommend starting with an entry interview. We have a lot of exit interviews and not enough entry interviews. And having the manager ask a lot of key questions, starting with what's important to you outside of work. That's when we talk about bring your whole self to work. If you ask that question of a new employee, you really prove that you mean it. And we get amazing answers. A working mother may say, I would love to take my child to school every morning at 7. Someone else can say, I have a physical therapy appointment every 2 weeks that I need to make at 6 p.m. Once the manager knows something like that, they can support the employee and the employee can feel they can bring their whole self to work. And, nobody minds, John, what they have to do occasionally. Everybody, I find, who is committed to their work doesn't mind going the extra mile, working over a weekend, working extra hours occasionally to meet a deadline, to deliver a project. What people mind is what's chronically, every day, day in, day out, expected of them.
Absolutely. Arianna, I guess that's why I'm partly hopeful and optimistic that if we can innovate and experiment and get this hybrid working right and value well-being as we've discussed, then that working mother or working father can do the school drop-off, yet they have the trust and support of their organisation and then work hard at other times of the day. So if we can get this right, I'm hoping it's beneficial for a lot of people. But that's why I'm optimistic. I just want to give you the last opportunity I assume you've already discussed your optimism, but what makes you really optimistic that we'll get this human capital, this approach to workers and staff, that will get this right in this period of pretty significant digital transformation?
So, John, I share your optimism mainly because I believe we now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to redefine productivity and the way we work and live, to bring about fundamental, both digital and humane transformations that frankly should have happened long before, but it took a crisis to bring them to the forefront of our attention. So that opportunity is what makes me optimistic.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you, Arianna. So a once-in-a-generation opportunity to get this right, but I think I share your optimism. Arianna, honestly, it's been wonderful talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your optimism. And I think it's a great way to end the conversation. I'm sure everyone listening and watching has got a lot out of this. But thank you so much for your time, Arianna. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you so much, John. And this is a conversation to be continued in the pages of The Economist. I still love to read the actual magazine. Also on LinkedIn, I write a lot about these things. I look forward to continuing the conversation. We all have a lot to learn from each other.
Absolutely. Thanks, Arianna. Take care.